So almost every day I hear people talking about what's the best fish food, asking me what kind of fish foods I use, and telling other people what fish foods they should use. It might be on YouTube, it might be on Facebook, it might be on Instagram, or any other social media platform, or even in person, where people just seem to be so passionate about fish food and what people should and shouldn't be serving. Hey fish friends, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Zenzo from Tazawa Tanks. So I'm going to talk about fish food. I've talked about it before, but I haven't talked about it in detail. I've done reviews on various foods from different manufacturers, and I've kind of given my own, take on the ingredients of those foods. But I want to talk about food in general. So I'm not going to talk about protein content. I'm not going to talk about ingredients and whether it's fish meal versus whole fish or things like that. I'm just going to talk about food in general and kind of give you my thoughts on food and what you should be thinking about as you're feeding your fish. So one of the most important things that I believe that people should consider when looking at fish food is what is readily available for you to purchase and what your fish will eat. Regardless of what people say as far as you got to buy this fish food or you got to use that kind of fish food, if you can't get it, if it's not reasonable for you to get on a consistent basis, it doesn't really make sense for you to have and try to feed that to your fish. Most importantly, will your fish eat it? No matter what kind of fancy food you buy or serve your fish, if they don't eat it, if they don't like it, it's worthless. So having a food not only that's accessible and readily available to you, but also something that your fish will eat and enjoy is very important. Now, quality of food is important, so I'm not going to tell you to cut the crust off of the bread that your kid doesn't want to eat on their sandwich and mix that with some cardboard and throw that in a tank. Obviously, that's not good for your fish, but there are a lot of good fish foods that are available, and you should be able to easily find something that's going to be effective for you and your fish. Now, it could be a dry food like a pellet food or a flake food. It could be something that's freeze-dried, and what freeze-dried is that's a food that originally was a live animal, and then it's basically dried. So think of like beef jerky minus all the salts. A couple of examples of freeze-dried foods that I have here, and these are actually designed for lizards and reptiles, but what I found is these are great for some of the fish that do need a little bit larger freeze-dried food. These are some large crickets that the Oscars eat. I also have freeze-dried mealworms. My mud skippers eat these, as do the Oscars. I have different types of shrimp and bloodworms and things like that. I've got some mysis shrimp. I have, some larger shrimp that the Oscars will eat, some of the larger fish. So that would be a freeze-dried food. I also do pellet food, so I've got some different examples up here. Now, all of these foods are foods that I use. And as you can tell by looking at this, the top of my tank here, I've got different brands. I have Hukari, I have Fluval, I have Northfin, etc. So there are different brands, and my feeling is a lot of these are just fine. These are, decent quality foods, and I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't be feeding, because you do have a lot of good choices. So on the dry food side, I am using various brands in different application depending on the fish that I'm serving. And I keep saying serving like I'm serving my family or something, but you know what? These fish are my family, so I'm going to keep saying that. Instead of feeding, I'll say serving. So anyway, there's a lot of different foods that I'll feed on the dry side. So pellets, I'm obviously using all these different brands, again, depending on the type of fish that I'm feeding or serving. And then there's also flake food. So flake food is also something that can feed larger fish and small fish, because you can take that flake and crumble it up. So for example, I might take a flake food that normally, maybe the peacocks behind me would be eating. Then I can crumble it up and feed it to the baby fish, the fry. I can put it in the Tanganyikan tank and make sure that the babies in there get it, or the guppies, etc. So flake food is also a dry food that's really decent if you get a relatively good quality one. And I've got some different brands. I've got Omega 1 here. I have the Tetra brand. I've used other brands as well. So I'm not going to get into brand names or anything. But again, dry food is something that should be readily available and easy for you to attain. Good for your fish. A lot of choices. And the other good thing is that it's a pretty decent shelf life. Other foods that I feed are frozen foods. So some of the fish that I serve are a little bit pickier eaters, or maybe I want to make sure that they're getting a better food. So just off the top of my head, thinking about some of the fish that I serve frozen foods to, definitely the brackish tanks, so the mud skippers and a puffer, they get bloodworms and things like that. Sometimes my marine tank, obviously the marine tank, they get brine shrimp and baby brine shrimp. The discus will get frozen bloodworms. I'll do brine shrimp in some of the other tanks, like my Tanganique and shell dweller tank, etc. So some of the fish are just pickier eaters, so it's hard for them to eat other foods, or they just become accustomed to getting a little bit spoiled, so I give them frozen foods. Definitely frozen foods are going to be a step above as far as quality of food compared to your dry foods, your freeze-dried foods, but sometimes it can be a little bit more cumbersome to have to get the food out and thaw it and mix it with water and walk around with a little dropper and feed your fish. So sometimes it's a lot easier just to reach your hand into a bag of pellets and throw those pellets in the tank and not have to do other work. Last thing I'm going to talk about is live foods. So some of my fish do get live foods, and it just kind of depends on, again, the application, what those fish need. And so in this tank, as an example, they get live earthworms. So upstairs on my deck, I've got a little grow bed thing that I made, and I throw compost in there, and I put a whole bunch of earthworms in there, and they've been multiplying. And so every once in a while I'll go in there with a little shovel and scoop out a handful of earthworms, rinse them off, throw them in there, and the Oscars go to town. Sometimes, obviously, in this tank, and you've seen that before, in the brackish tank, I keep saying this tank, but you can't see it because it's behind you, but they get live foods. I'll do like little mealworms, I'll do like little baby crickets, flightless fruit flies. I've got a little container here of those fun ones. They'll get live foods from time to time, and some of the other tanks, you know, on occasion I'll throw in some live foods. So I am doing mealworms, I'll do the baby crickets, I'll do the fruit flies, I'll do earthworms. I have done like blackworms before, although I don't have a culture of blackworms right now, and I don't have like a hatchery for brine shrimp or anything, but maybe one day I'll do that if I get into fish that might need you know, fresh brine shrimp all the time, or if I need baby brine shrimp, I might get into that. So in addition to the foods I just mentioned, and I don't have any examples here, but I do want to mention produce, so like cucumbers, zucchini, you know, lettuce, spinach, stuff like that. Some of your fish that are herbivores or have a more plant-based diet would benefit from that. So in this tank behind me, there's a pleco, so the pleco gets fed vegetables, and I'll just you know, cook like a little zucchini or cucumber and then throw it in there, and then it eats it up. The mbuna, obviously, they get some of those vegetable-based foods. And live foods, one of the things I didn't mention that you've heard me talk about before are snails. Obviously the puffer gets snails, and the Oscars eat them sometimes as well. So that was it. I just wanted to do a quick little video, talk about foods, talk about my take on it. You know, there's a lot of good foods out there, and I'm not going to be one of those people that says you have to buy this food or you have to buy that food. First of all, I'm not sponsored by anyone. Nobody is paying me to talk about a specific brand, although sometimes manufacturers will send me bags of food and boxes of food to have me test it out, and I'll make a video on that from time to time. Most recently, thank you to Hikari USA for sending me this big bag of Vibra-Bites. I did post this on Instagram, so I'm actually going to feed this to my African cichlids, and this tank love these things. So I do feed the Vibra-Bites around. I bought a bag before from Aquarium Co-op, aquariumcoop.com, but I did get this big bag here for free. But again, no one's paying me to talk about fish food, so I'm just going to share with you that I bought most of these. In fact, all of these foods except for this bag and this container. Well, this container actually is just an empty container now that I put other stuff in, but this originally was a food that was sent to me for free, and the Vibra-Bites, and I think I paid for everything else. So just like you guys, I buy a lot of fish food, I have a lot of fish, and it comes out of my own pocket. So there you have it. That's my take on food. I'm going to stop talking now because these are frozen foods and I got to go put them back in the freezer. Would love to read down below in the comments what you feed your fish, what you're passionate about as far as fish foods, or are you like me and you just say, hey, whatever is accessible, whatever is reasonably priced, whatever my fish will eat, that's what I feed them. That's all I had for now. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.